Today we're looking at Civil War monuments. Hello, welcome to the Daily Bellringer. Please don't forget to subscribe and take a look at the questions down in the description. Also, don't forget to check out dailybellringer.com where you'll find more resources that go with many of the Bellringer videos. If you were to visit almost any Civil War historic site or even drive by an old park or public place, you may very well likely see a Civil War monument or statue. In recent years, these monuments have become very controversial as many of the monuments honor Southern soldiers and commanders who were fighting to preserve Confederate ideals. Today, I would like to take a moment to look at the history of Civil War monuments for both the North and the South. Right now, I am standing here at the Vicksburg National Military Park, which preserves much of the battlefield at Vicksburg, Mississippi. Here at Vicksburg, there are over 1,400 monuments, making it one of the Civil War historic sites with the most monuments. In the United States, there are actually over 6,000 markers and monuments commemorating the Civil War and those that fought in it. So, who put up all of these monuments? For the most part, it was the veterans of the Civil War themselves that went back to battlefields and wanted to create markers or some sort of way to show where their regiment or unit saw action during battles, and also to remember their friends and family who lost their lives fighting in the war. There are monuments to specific companies and regiments, and monuments dedicated to the soldiers of certain states that were involved in the battles. A great example here at Vicksburg is the Illinois Memorial, which has the names of over 36,000 Illinois soldiers that were involved in the fighting here inscribed in the walls. The monument was dedicated in 1906 and cost the state of Illinois $250,000 to construct, which was 20% of the state's entire budget for that year. Most Civil War monuments were put up between the mid-1880s through the early 1900s. Many were privately funded, but many were paid for by the federal government or state governments. As no surprise, most state legislatures during the late 1800s were filled with representatives that just so happened to be veterans of the Civil War. So getting funding from states for monuments was not a problem. Although most monuments were erected years after the war, some were built just within months of the fighting. For example, the Hazen Monument, the oldest Civil War monument still standing in its original location at the Stones River battlefield in central Tennessee, was built by Union soldiers who had fought there at the battle on December 31st of 1862 and then returned just a few months later in the summer of 1863 to build the monument to mark where they had fought. When touring Civil War battlefields, you will notice that most of the monuments are for the Union side. There are several reasons for this. One, the Southern economy after the war was completely wrecked, so trying to raise funds to build a monument dedicated to Confederate soldiers was difficult. Second, the South had lost the war, so there was not as big a push to establish monuments to remember what had happened during the war. However, as years went by after the war, there was a push by groups such as the United Daughters of the Confederacy, or UDC, to create monuments to the Confederacy. Unfortunately, the UDC also wished to promote what has become known as the Lost Cause narrative of the Civil War. The Lost Cause narrative sought to romanticize or justify the Confederate cause during the war. So many Confederate monuments seen today, such as those in public spaces like town squares and parks, were not erected by Confederate veterans themselves, but rather by groups that had ulterior purposes. The United Daughters of the Confederacy established over 400 monuments to the Confederacy. With that being said, although, not all Confederate monuments were built by the UDC, and many do mark locations on battlefields where Confederate forces fought. Additionally, these monuments serve an important purpose for historians. When attempting to interpret and understand battles that were very large and confusing, it's extremely helpful to have markers placed by the veterans themselves in order to understand where exactly action took place. Interestingly, though, many monuments are not exactly in the correct location because early on, when monuments were first being built, much of the land where battles were fought was on private property, so they couldn't build directly on someone else's land. Some monuments were placed and would specifically say the actual location of the action was somewhere else. There are also many monuments on battlefields that are dedicated to individuals who fought in the battle, and some that mark where certain soldiers fell. For example, when touring battlefields, many times there are monuments that mark the location where commanders or generals were wounded or killed. Although many of these monuments have come to be a point of argument among Americans, they're still an important symbol to remember our past and see where our nation has been so that we can better guide where we are going in the future. So with that, hopefully you learned something, and thanks for watching.